Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Landy Lodge. I see we've got some sickos and normies here already. We got a great one lined up for you all today. I have an amazing guest. If you would be so kind as to please introduce yourself, and thank you so much again for coming on. Oh,
I am muted.
there we go.
So thank you for inviting me. I am Michelle. I have a channel called Pajama Let's Play, where I do Kingdom Hearts theories, and sometimes I stream on a completely spontaneous schedule.
Always the best schedule, as they say. Nothing better than irregular programming.
Right.
Before we continue, I have some sickos on my end that I need to thank for making this possible. Those being the sages of the lodge, those absolute crazy sickos who donate as little as 1 gil a month to keep my nonsense going. So without further ado, major love and thank you to Charlotte, Alex, Chris, Maria, Shane, David, Scott, Jillian, Corey, Twilight Blaze, Nick Taborski, Kevin, AJ, Michael, Andrew, Brendan, Gaseous Snake, Mookie DTRT90, Orpheus Joshua, Jordan, Corey, Axel, DJ Ghoul, Brady Burleson, and Jack 2 Park. Thank you all again so much. I do my best to put on a good show here, and part of my methods is getting great guests like you, Michelle. So let's just jump right into it here. It's been a crazy time to be a Kingdom Hearts fan. We couldn't have guessed that we were going to get 2 new games announced. You know, one we would have been lucky. What are your biggest takeaways from the 20th anniversary event? Like, what do you got your sights set on?
So first and foremost, this was my first anniversary event, so I had zero expectations other than an announcement about Dark Road. So I figured if they didn't give us a deadline, I was going to be very mad. So I was excited to get Missing Link and Kingdom Hearts 4, but my favorite part is that Strelitzia made an appearance. So, because she's been on my mind lately.
So you talked a little bit about that in the pre-roll. You've got some theories about Strelitzia. In fact, you've got theories about a few people I want to get into. But let's start with Strelitzia. Because I feel like everyone's trying to get a grip on it. We haven't seen many theories come out yet. Everyone's kind of doing these everything you need to know. Where's your theory brain at? What's that cooking up for Strelitzia?
Okay, so last Friday I had released my thoughts on the trailers with everything but the Strelitzia stuff. This Friday there's a video specifically about Strelitzia in Kingdom Hearts 4 and how she got there. And then next Friday gets into the theory. So without giving too much away, unless y'all want me to spoil all of it, which, you know, I'm persuadable. Basically, the Master of Masters at the end of the Union Cross finale came and grabbed Data Strelitzia, right? I don't know if that was officially said or if we all just kind of jumped on board with that.
Are you talking about that true dandelion scene, or what scene?
No.
What scene in particular? Okay, no. Which scene were you talking about in particular?
So it's when Elrena and her Chirithy come to Ven, and they say someone who looks an awful lot like Strelitzia was taken out by someone with a cloak. So I am of the belief that that was the Master of Masters, not Luxu. Mostly because he's so much taller than Strelitzia.
Fair enough point, and at least Luxu in those Union Cross times was not the Zigbar height he is today. He was a much more stout individual.
Yes, and he was a whole different body.
That is for sure.
We don't know how old he was. We don't know anything about his true form. So, that being said, I believe the Master of Masters took Data Strelitzia to unreality and put her there. Because I think unreality is a realm of video games. It's the opposite of our reality, a world of fiction that darkness can't interfere with because it's programmed. So we have Wreck-It Ralph, which is a world of video games. So Yozora is a video game. I think all of that is going to be unreality. So if you have a data version of a person, where do you put them? A datascape, which could be a video game world.
So you're arguing overall that the world of fiction and Quadratum as we know it is a datascape. It's a world of video games like you're saying, and to contextualize that, it would be a world of data.
Not just a world, a whole realm.
A whole realm, a data realm, right. Not just a data world, data realm.
Yes, I think Quadratum is the Yozora world within the realm of video games, and that Game Central Station will have a world, and the Guardians of the Galaxy will have a world, because they just made that video game a little while ago.
So basically you're putting your bets on that this is not the material Strelitzia, this is a data Strelitzia that's interacting with Sora.
Yes.
So go ahead.
Because I think, and this is the part that was submitted by a subscriber of mine named Dreamer Rose, who I love. So we believe that her heart, when her body perished, merged into Lauriam's heart, just like Ven did with Sora.
Okay.
So she doesn't have a body,
buy
but
it.
she still has a heart. And the Master of Masters, not knowing any of this, would take Data Strelitzia because he doesn't know where her heart is.
Okay. So then let me ask you, would that mean that, like, so we know Sora broke a nature taboo in Kingdom Hearts 3. That's kind of how he got there. So seeing as this is a world of data, and this seems to be our material Sora, is him being there, breaking the nature's taboo, is that why we see Darkseid show up in the trailer? Because by Sora sheerly being there, he kind of corrupts the way the world was programmed. Because if it was programmed to be without light and dark, that trailer alone showed us darkness creeped its way in somehow. Is Sora now a walking nature taboo?
I do believe that. I do think he's going through some sort of penance, because they can't just get rid of Sora. One, because the fans won't allow it. We just won't.
Well, we love him too much.
Yeah. And two, there's plenty of ways they could explain all that in the plot. Kingdom Hearts is crazy convoluted. I'm sure they'll find a way to explain why Sora would be in a datascape.
As long as
just like when he went to Roxas's datascape.
Exactly. As crazy as it could be, as long as it abides by its own logic, I'm personally here for it. But that's interesting, because I want to see more Strelitzia theories start popping up, because I think it's too suspicious that she's here. You know what I mean? Yeah. We can't just assume, oh, she died, she went there. Because there are some inconsistencies, right? And these can be answered in the game, but like, how does she know who Sora is? How did she know where to find him? You know, how does she know that he's in an afterlife? Now, you could answer these things. Hearts are connected. She could be, like you said, in Lauriam's heart, and through that, she has a connection to Sora that she could sort of reverse engineer. But I don't know. There's a lot of things going on there. I have to believe that she's taking information from somebody. Would you share that belief? Do you think Strelitzia is taking information from somebody? And if so, who?
Okay. So I haven't made a video about this part yet because I had not considered any of it until just now. But now that you mention it, I think she is getting her instructions from the same person that Yozora is, because he was told to save Sora. So she was probably told to save Sora. And I think they are getting their instructions from the Master of Masters, who is clearly there making the heart shape over the moon.
Mm-hmm. So who do you think that is? Because I have a guess.
For who the heart shape is?
No, who's instructing the two of them? Do you think it's the Master of Masters, or do you think it's somebody else? Do you think it's the Master?
I think it's absolutely the Master of Masters, making sure Sora makes it back to the timeline, because he still has his own Keyblade War to do with darkness.
Gotcha. So he would have a vested interest in getting Sora back to the real world, so he could sort of do what Xehanort couldn't. Yeah, I guess in a sense.
I'd also like to point out that the Master of Masters has a darkness entity within his heart, so that could easily be how darkness comes into unreality.
It could have been him who brought it. That's a good point. I have to say, I think it's very possible these instructions, and I want to give a shout out, I don't know if he's listening right now, but to my boy Lands of Masters. Him and I are going to do a full-fledged video on this. But I think Riku gave him those instructions. Because think about it. Melody of Memory ends with Riku going to Quadratum. What happened in that span of time? You know what I mean? Now Sora is waking up in Quadratum. There's a big time gap there between Riku getting to Quadratum and what we see in Kingdom Hearts 4. I think it's very possible those... Here's overall what I think's going on with Sora. I think him being in this world of fiction threatens his very existence. I think the longer he stays there, the more he fades from memory, the more he fades, period. And that's why saving Sora can be equated to crystallizing him, because you're sort of freezing him in time. This way he can't continue to fade. You can't continue to forget about him. Because in in the ending where you actually beat Yozora, what does he say? He's just like, oh, my powers aren't needed yet. Meaning if
Right.
Sora is strong enough to beat him, then, oh, he doesn't need to freeze him. Sora's still got it going on. But if Yozora is strong enough to take him down, then that's a sign that Sora is fading and needs to be preserved. Because, like, the idea that saving Sora is putting him in, stasis and crystal stasis doesn't make a whole lot of literal sense. Where does the contradiction come in? I don't know if you've ever had any thoughts about that. But how do you equate saving Sora to crystallizing him? There's got to be a big gap of context there to have that make sense.
So pretty much everything I know about Final Fantasy, I have gained from my comment section.
Who probably said everything about Fabula Nova Crystallis, I imagine.
Yes, and I did do a deep dive on that for videos at the very beginning of my channel like a year ago. So at one point I knew Fabula Nova Crystallis pretty well, but that's long gone. Anyway, I have thoughts on verses, but so when it comes to crystallization, I don't fully understand how it works.
So the idea is when you've
put too much
served your
thought.
purpose, essentially, is like when you've served your purpose, that's when one would turn into, I believe it's an LC, is what they would call it. And that's sort of that frozen crystal stasis. Chat, feel free to correct me if I got that wrong, by the way. That's what you're here for. That's what you're here for. But go on.
So that actually, for me, says it's probably not Riku. Because if you get crystallized after fulfilling your purpose, then Sora getting crystallized would mean he fulfilled his purpose. And I don't think Riku has a purpose for Sora other than to just return home. So I feel like maybe not the Master of Masters, I'm not tied to that theory, but whomever is giving these instructions clearly has a purpose for Sora if he's going to get crystallized anyway.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I think there has to be some overall greater purpose in order for him to be frozen like that. It can't just be because he lost the battle or we're trying to keep him from being forgotten or fading from existence. I did want to ask you, because there's a few things that aren't being talked about, so I would like to get your take on it.
Sure.
What role is Ven's Chirithy going to play in the future? Because this is a character nobody's talking about, yet he had this big return, and he was a huge character in Kingdom Hearts 3, mind you, and nobody's really talking about him. What role is he going to play?
I think his primary purpose is to bring Ven's memory back. Or, actually, no, I don't think that. Scratch that. Sorry. The fact that Ven embraces Chirithy means his memories are already back.
It's starting to come back.
I think he's there to act as his dream eater and ease in the more traumatic things that he's been through and also has done to others. Because, it literally broke him to find that and literally fight his darkness.
Yep.
So, and then it broke him again to fight his darkness again with Vanitas. So I think because Chirithy is there for this one, he, she, I don't know the gender, they.
Let's go with they.
They, that sounds safe. I think they are going to be able to give Ven his memories in full in a way that he doesn't have to go to sleep.
Do you think Naminé could have something to do with that? Because she's another character that I'm like, she has such a cool power and cool purpose. I hope they can keep finding ways to use her in the future. I feel like she fits the bill for that.
Okay.
Oh boy.
So.
Well, all right. What did I trigger here? Go on.
Okay. So I don't really get to talk about these wild theories as much as I'd like to. I mostly do big group discussions where, I let other people go off on their theories that I don't really have much to say on. No shade. It's just my knowledge is kind of specific. And I already forgot the question. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I was talking about Naminé.
Naminé, yes.
Yes.
Okay. So Axel Vega and I have actually been discussing Naminé recently, and how she might connect to the Unchained Realm. I really don't want to spoil that collab.
Keep that on the DL.
But it seems to me that the way she got to Castle Oblivion is because of previous choices she had made after her creation. Because I don't know how else they would have taken her from Kyrie.
That's a good point. We don't know a lot about the spawn point of Naminé. We're kind of missing that spawn point. We get it for Roxas, and we get it for Xion. We kind of get to see that. But Naminé's a unique case in that we don't really see her spawn into existence and where she ends up in Castle Oblivion from there. Do you think that's
And
something they would touch on? You think they might go back and touch on where exactly Naminé came from and how she got to that point? Or do you think that's just off screen for us to assume?
so this is also my first Nomura series,
Okay.
Kingdom Hearts is. So I don't, anyway, my exposure is limited.
Gotcha.
But based on just the Lushu reveal, I would say that anyone who is left vague, there's a reason for it. Those characters
fair.
that come on and don't do a lot, like Strelitzia did, like we had how many like scenes with Strelitzia being obsessed with player, and then just to have her what perish.
So I thought of something really funny. So you see how like Strelitzia has this fascination with the player?
Yes.
So could you imagine like young Xehanort or even old man Xehanort show up in Quadratum and then like she just kind of like starts blushing and Sora's like, what's going on? And she's like, you would not get it. But speaking of which, to tie that into a constructive conversation, do you think Xehanort's going to return in any capacity? Because I'm convinced young Xehanort will be back.
So in the trailer, we saw two cloaks, right? I think it was in Missing Link. Maybe it was four. I don't know. I should have rewatched the
We
trailers
definitely
this
saw
morning.
two cloaks at the end of Kingdom Hearts 4. One is implied to
Yes.
be the master, and there was another one on the side being very quiet, a little bit sus.
Yes, that everyone is convinced is Lushu. I am convinced that that is young Xehanort.
I don't think it's Lushu. I'm with you. I don't know if it's young
Yay.
Xehanort. I'd like it to be, but I don't think it's Lushu. Because what? He's going to summon the foretellers back and then just like, all right, see you later, guys. Go into the world of fiction. Lushu, what the hell is that? He's gone. Like, I don't know. I don't see that happening.
So I think in Dark Road, we're going to find out that the Master of Masters took Xehanort to a lot of places.
Yeah.
And that unreality is one of them. So I think that is their time together in unreality.
Okay.
Which, if that's the case, then that can't be Lushu because he has to stay in real reality.
Especially
Because he has to
now
stay
that
close
he's
to
kind of
Nolan.
got the foretellers on his hand and bringing them back. And the black box, what? He's going to leave the black box unattended after digging it up? I don't know.
So Lushu also has to stay close to No Name, which is why he can't be in unreality like ever, because No Name always stays in the Kingdom Hearts reality to record it in the Book of Prophecies. The Book of Prophecies doesn't seem to say anything about unreality.
Then, okay, then how did the master find out about it? Because he did end up finding out about the world of fiction. So if not via No Name, by what means did he seek it out?
I suspect he probably made it.
Ah,
He made the datascape of Daybreak Town.
that's
If he
true.
can make one world, why can't he expand to a whole realm?
And what do you think was it just a place to preserve Sora or a place to preserve, like, if we extend that he did create the world of fiction, but for what means then? What's his end game with that? What's the purpose of unreality then?
So two things. One, to preserve the dandelions. I think the dandelions are also in the datascape.
Okay.
Or unreality. If unreality is a datascape, I imagine that's where the dandelions are. And that it's the data versions of them over there. Second, I think he wants to do what Xehanort tried to do, but do it better.
Yes.
And so this is a realm that he can control, that darkness he thinks can't get into, except it clearly can, And I think Game Central Station is one of the ways in and out.
Do you think there's any part of him that wants to almost like combine the two worlds or merge them into one?
I don't think so. I think the fall of Daybreak Town and seeing that coming and trying to fight it, I think he just accepts that he can't save that reality. That darkness can have that one, light will take a different one.
Okay, so I think you're saying he's kind of being fatalistic about it, where it's like, look, because I think one thing you're starting to see recur in Kingdom Hearts is apocalyptic events. Like that seems to be a pattern forming. So that would be something if he were to like conclude, listen, there's no stopping this cycle. There's nothing we could do. You think the world could be saved by 7 people? So supposedly that would give him a motive to want to set up another world where he could sort of just leave it in stasis, where those apocalyptic events can't happen. But then I guess I
It's
would ask you, why then make the heart over the moon?
okay. So I there's also a possibility that I see where unreality is kind of his backup plan, where, he's going to try to fight darkness. He's going to try to do whatever he's going to do because you can't defeat it. So I don't really understand what he's going for there, but I think he's going to try that. And then if it fails, he'll move over to unreality and try again. See if he can change circumstances.
Okay. Now, speaking of unreality, and I wanted to get your take on this too, in a recent interview Nomura did, he talked about how it's kind of reversed in both worlds. Like, the Kingdom Hearts world sees the world of fiction as fictitious, but the world of fiction sees the Kingdom Hearts world as fictitious. Like, they both
Yeah.
worlds see themselves as the real deal, and the opposite is fiction. Is one right or wrong, or is this just a matter of perspective?
I mean, I think it's all about perspective. We don't even know that our world is real. If
Which
you
is
really
fair
want to get
enough.
into it, there's like the Matrix theory, there's we're all in a simulation
Simulation
theory,
theory, all sorts of those things. Yep.
which sometimes I have that thought myself, not gonna lie.
I mean, it's hard not to. You see enough synchronicities flowing around, you start to go, huh,
Yeah. The
interesting. I'm
only
with
thing we're
you.
missing is glitches.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think personally I've seen a few glitches over the last 4 or 5 years, but that's just me. Um,
Fair enough.
but it's interesting because I have to wonder. Do you think we're going to get into, do you think this turn, like, regardless of what the Master's plans are, do you think there's going to almost turn into like a war of the realms, where maybe only one of these worlds can exist and there's got to be some deciding factor? Like, will the Kingdom Hearts world always see Quadratum as fictitious, or will they come to see it as like a world that's more of a mirror of their own? Because, right, that's what Sora and Yozora are. They're like a mirror to one another, And I
Right.
felt like when they interacted with one another, they didn't go, well, you're fiction. No, you're fiction, you know? Are we going to reach a point where both realms see each other as the mirror, or do you think we're going to have like a little tug of war between the two?
I'm hoping that they'll work in tandem. Maybe create an easy way between the two without having to commit a nature taboo. Um, it wouldn't surprise me if they end up going to war, but I feel like that's going bigger than the Master of Masters, and I don't know that Kingdom Hearts is going to go beyond the Master of Masters.
I don't know either, but do you ever wonder if there's somebody even behind him? Do you think about it sometimes? Or do you think he's really the end point?
So I think he's both the beginning and the end. I think, just as he said in Union Cross, when he was a kid, there were no Keyblade Masters. That just wasn't a thing. And then they had their war, and he's one of probably a few to survive, if any. Um, but then when Dark Road came out, I'm a big fan of Norse mythology. So having all of these Norse gods being named in this game was like, huh, I wonder if this is, and apparently I'm not the only one to come up with this. I've seen other videos since then, but that maybe this is a parallel to Ragnarok.
I'll tell you right now, it is 150% a parallel to Ragnarok. I plan on dropping a video talking about the parallels to Ragnarok, because you already brought up that the Norse gods are here. They're not just the Norse gods, they're the ones that play big roles in Ragnarok.
Yeah, yeah. And I
And
can
there's
probably tell you who we're missing and what's going to happen as long as he follows the mythology.
Well, I'll tell you this: like, one thing you can expect is for Balder to die just
Yes.
before the trigger event. That he's almost like this shot heard around the world, that sort of like lifts the, almost signals as like an
Yes.
omen of chaos.
Yes. And I think we're going to find the Hoth character. They'll probably name him Hod because that's the English way of doing it. So I imagine we'll have him, and it'll be somehow he accidentally makes that happen. Try and be careful of YouTube words.
There you
Um,
go.
So hopefully y'all can fill in those pieces. But if you think about it, who would want to stop Ragnarok the most? I think it would be Odin, who's already in Dark Road, so it can't be him. And he's an old man at that point. And Loki, because he's he's the one who always makes it happen. He's the one who tricked Hod. He's the one who brings in the giants. Like, he's the reason everyone breaks out of hell. Like, so if I were Loki, I would have deep regret over this cyclical war I keep causing, watching the people I love die over and over and over again. So I think it makes sense the Master of Masters might be a Dark Road character named Loki, who's trying to stop the war.
Interesting. How would you feel about, because everyone's got their eyes on Odin as the Lushu vessel. How would you feel if Loki almost served as the Lushu? Oh God, I got it backwards. How would you feel if Lushu served as like the Loki stand-in? Not like physically him, but a body that he jacked, right? So it could be in accordance with what you said. But like he's the body hopper, right? Wouldn't he, in theory, kind of be the one to hop into the Loki body? And like, I see how the Master could do it, but then suddenly if you have Lushu as the stand-in, he has a reason to want to make it happen. Because then he could ignite Xehanort down the dark road that he needs him to go.
Right, absolutely. And that was something I had considered, and I mentioned it in a video, and I found a reason why that's not Lushu.
Okay.
I don't remember what that reason is.
Fair enough. People will have to look into that for themselves.
It was something like super specific and implied, like, no name hadn't been bequeathed or something. I don't know, something along those lines. I will reach out to you and let you know.
A little follow-up.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think the, because I mean, a lot of people, myself included, drew a lot of connections to the Union Cross finale in Ragnarok. There was a lot of that there. And again, even in the little bit that we've talked about here, we see that Dark Road is likely going to do it again. Do you think that's the story of Kingdom Hearts? Because according to mythology, that's the story of civilization. Do you think that's the story, is that like we're trapped in this cruel cycle of building ourselves up and burning ourselves down, and it comes with the casualties, it comes with the trauma, and that the Master's motivation is to try and put a stop to it? Or anyone's motivation could be to try and put a stop to it. Do you think that's ultimately what the story of Kingdom Hearts is going to turn into, is how do we stop that vicious cycle of, and it doesn't have to be seen as a vicious cycle, but this sort of death and rebirth cycle that always brings casualties with it?
Right. I do think that's the end goal of the series, but I've also noticed that for the most part, the series seems to follow the order of human religion, because paganism was around forever, and then Christianity happened, and now we've got light versus dark and all of these very Judeo-Christian allegories that weren't so much in the other games. So it's also possible that it's telling the story of religion within humanity, but putting it in the context of Kingdom Hearts.
And I think that's not only more than likely, but probable at this point. I mean, you don't go naming the foretellers after the 7 deadly sins if that's not what you're trying to accomplish here. So, an astute observation. I'd agree.
And we also have Hercules representing the Greek pantheon, so maybe we'll see more of that.
Yeah, and I think that's why they've always had such a love for Olympus in the Kingdom Hearts series. I think that's why Hercules is one of those characters that are actually relevant outside of his world. The Kingdom Hearts 4 trailer is starting to imply that Hades may even start to transcend the Olympus world. And I don't think that's an accident. I think Nomura is a lover. Nomura, Kitase, Nojima, Tai Yasue, all the guys involved, I think they are lovers of this kind of stuff, because you see it in all their projects. Like you said, this is your first Nomura series. Well, let me tell you, these archetypes are not unique to Kingdom Hearts. They're all over the Square Enix catalog, let alone Nomura's catalog.
Yes, I am aware that Final Fantasy is really big into Egyptian mythology and I think Hindu mythology. So if you put all those
a lot
together,
of the summons are inspired by Hindu mythology.
So I could see all of the different pantheons and their stories represented within Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts coming together to end that cycle that you were describing.
And that would actually be cool. And I guess that it would even ask the question, is that really a good thing to end that cycle? Because maybe that sort of death and rebirth is actually the way things grow and progress over time. And that if you freeze the world into a stasis without the Ragnarok event, then nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to grow. You'll always just be stuck. It would be kind of cool to see them almost visit these mythological, philosophical concepts You know, they always play with the idea, like, we're starting to see Versus 13 bleed in a little bit. And if people can recall any of the trailers, there was one that had a Shakespeare quote, and something along the lines of, there is no good in evil, only thinking about it makes it so. Almost, so I could see them sort of visiting this morally gray area where it's like, yeah, you could understand why the Master would want to stop the recurring Ragnarok, but then you have to consider, what are the consequences of stopping that recurring cycle? Do you leave the world in like crystal stasis? And at least like in a lot of stories, like the idea of too much light actually does imply like a sort of crystal stasis. Like you do see this, especially in Final Fantasy XIV, they're starting to play with this idea. The Soul Calibur series played with this idea that if there's so much light that it bleeds out the darkness, the world actually like freezes in a stasis. It's not just some like beloved heaven where everybody's drinking tea and hanging out. It's like, no, the world freezes.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to point out is that one thing I hold fast, just because you feel something is the greater good or for the greater good doesn't mean it actually is. And we can never know really what the greater good is unless we poll every single person in the collective consciousness.
Yes.
So,
well, there's a sense of hubris.
Anyone's going to get to all 8 billion of us.
Exactly. And that's the thing. There's a sense of hubris, thinking that you have the capacity to understand exactly what the greater good is. And I mean, what phrase has more hubris than Master of Masters, right? You know? Yes. If anything's going to be that character's downfall, it would have to be the hubris, right? It would have to be his pride, in a sense.
Yeah. I mean, isn't he the symbol for pride?
We don't know yet. It's implied, but I don't want to say so until we know his name, right? Because if we have 6 of the sins in name, we're going to get a 7th in name. So until we know his name, we can't say for sure. But I always found it peculiar that Vanitas is named Vanitas because vanity is a synonym for pride.
Right.
And you have to wonder if the darkness that is encapsulated in Vanitas, is that sort of like a foreteller stand-in? Is that one of the darknesses that the Master wants to relinquish?
So I think the 7 darknesses within the Master of Masters and his apprentices are, you know, the envy, all of them.
Wrath, envy, greed, lust, gluttony, the whole kitchen sink,
But then Vanitas would be one of those lesser darknesses that was meant to go into the new union leaders. So vanity, maybe just jealousy instead of envy.
Things like, a lesser dark. That would be interesting if they played with that. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that plan. I'd like to see that pan out. What do you make of seeing darkness in the Dark Road trailer? Specifically at the what's up?
In the Dark Road trailer?
Yeah. If you go to the point where Odin is standing over the collapsed armored Xehanort and armored Ericus, outside that little shield, you could just see darkness like sort of floating right over here.
I actually didn't notice that. I was very much focused on Odin looking down on clearly Xehanort and Ericus.
Oh yeah.
You know, being like, okay, well, I guess one of you gets one Keyblade and the other gets the other.
Yeah, they're the only ones that remain. What do you make of them wanting to revisit Xehanort in that context, by the way? And the fact that Xehanort, like, his story clearly didn't end after Kingdom Hearts 3 because he's in Melody of Memory, he was in the Union Cross finale, and he's got Dark Road. Yep,
and it all gave us more questions.
Yeah, it's not like it just gave us straight up answers and just tied up loose ends. It was like, oh no, there was more to him than you ever imagined.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm kind of annoyed by that. I'm kind of done with Xehanort. You know, I thought they gave him a beautiful ending, having him and Ericus reconcile like that and become brothers once again. You know, I thought that was beautiful and perfect. So for them to keep focusing on Xehanort, I really wish they would focus more on Lushu. But I think they want to keep that secretive and use it as a marketing ploy.
I think that's an interesting take. As someone who loves Xehanort, I'd hope he doesn't end up taking screen time away from Lushu and the Master. Melody of Memory made sense. Him as a sort of stand-in for Kairi's trauma, I thought was appropriate given that he kidnapped her as a child and sent her away to a completely different world. So him being the stand-in for the trauma, I appreciated. Him, the player reincarnating into him at the end of Union Cross, I'm just going to need some payoff for that. Right?
That
Like, as a
that made me
standalone...
so mad. That made me so mad. Like I knew everyone was thinking that, but I was like, you know what? If they do this, then my channel is just going to crash. Like because everyone could be a reincarnation.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I need some payoff with that. I don't want to
Yeah.
just accept, okay, player reincarnated into Xehanort, Xehanort did Xehanort things, that's the end of it. I
Right.
want some payoff with that player thing. Personally, I think we're going to see young Xehanort come back. One, because I think through Kingdom Hearts time warp juju, he knew more than Master Xehanort.
Yeah.
It seemed like he knew more than even Master Xehanort himself knew. Maybe Master Xehanort had some Alzheimer's at the end, I don't know. But it always seemed like young Xehanort was a little bit more clued in. And I have to imagine Xehanort is not going to settle for just being a scapegoat. Also, he's like the one Kingdom Hearts character that hasn't really redeemed himself yet that's due for one. Like, you saw Ericus had his redemption. He screwed up in Birth by Sleep. So much of Birth by Sleep was Ericus's fault. But you saw his reconciliation with his students, them hugging him apologizing for his shortcomings. Xehanort may have been forgiven by Ericus, but I don't feel like that character is redeemed or forgiven yet. I think he has one step further to go where he needs to redeem himself in some quality. Because to me, Kingdom Hearts is so much a story of not only redemption, but of death and rebirth. And maybe it's just because I love the character, but I would love to see young Xehanort step in and redeem himself in some way. Just to make that send-off a little bit better. That's just me.
So I would say Xehanort did get redeemed in 3 because he is the only reason Sora is legitimately a Keyblade master now. He bequeathed the Keyblade to Sora, making him a Keyblade master completely.
I would agree, but he also killed Kairi, and I don't think anyone walked away happy with him.
Well, that was that whole greater good thing. I mean, we may not agree with his methods, but we can all understand his intentions.
Hashtag Xehanort did nothing wrong, I suppose.
Oh no, he did plenty wrong. I would not have made most of those decisions. But you know, I see where he's coming from. I do. Like I kind of feel for the guy. He just wants neutrality.
He's the guy where he had a valid critique, but his solution was dog shit. And we can all level with that because we've all been that person in the past if we're not already still that person now. You know, but I do give him credit that I do think he was one step ahead of Ericus in many ways. I think Ericus was blinded by light. Xehanort, even in Birth by Sleep, contrary to some opinions out there, Xehanort was always about balance, even in Birth by Sleep.
Right.
That wasn't something that just popped up in Kingdom Hearts 3. He always spoke of the balance between dark and light. He just disagreed with this idea that it's light's job to vanquish the darkness. He was like, you have it backwards. Light casts darkness. You know?
Yes.
And that stuff I've always leveled with and liked about the character.
The main thing I think is Xehanort's problem is that he's so singularly focused. So, you know, like as Terranort, he was trying to regain his memories. And then clearly something diverted his attention, you know? And actually, no, I've got this in the wrong order. I'm sorry.
You're good. Take it from the top.
Birth by Sleep, he is trying to make the Keyblade. And so he thinks he needs to get 2 equal and opposite forces to do it. But then he learns that he needs 7 Seekers of Light and 13 Seekers of Darkness. So then he completely abandons everything else and focuses just on that. And I think that's why his path ended up the way it did. He just lost, and why he forgot so much, because it wasn't relevant to his new goal.
That, and, you know, given his ability to time travel and pull even bodies through time, not bodies, hearts through time, he said something that I can never get out of my head, and that's that he plans for every eventuality. He was able to see...
What a prideful thing to say.
But can you imagine he even planned for when he would lose?
I mean, okay, it's always a good idea to plan for your own loss. Like, that's realistic. But like the only person who could possibly predict and plan for every eventuality is someone with a book of prophecies. And unless he has one, which I don't think he does,
He doesn't.
then he can't do that.
And that's why I think it'll be interesting to see a little bit more about his journey. And one thing that got me excited for Dark Road, which I think too many people are sleeping on, but we got to see a scene with old man Xehanort, and that he went to go see the mirror on
Yes,
the
the
wall. And
mirror.
it's like we're gonna
Yes.
get some real like fill-ins, at least on the story of Xehanort. We are 45 minutes deep already, which felt like a flash.
Yay.
Before we go to the chat for questions, is there anything else that we haven't touched on yet about all these new announcements that you wanted to discuss today?
Oh, one more thing. Sora looking so realistic, I think actually backs up my theory about unreality being video games because yes, he looks realistic, but he looks like he's in a Final Fantasy game.
He's in versus 13.
I
He's in
can't
versus
agree
13.
with. They have an NDA on versus 13. I don't know what it says.
Well, the first
Probably
rule
can't-
about versus 13 is understanding that it's not versus 13.
Yes, it's 15.
Yes,
But
yeah, 15.
But whatever their NDA said is going to dictate how much of it can be in Kingdom Hearts in the first place. So I'm trying not to get my hopes up, trying not to repeat the times when I overthought theories and got disappointed. So
Well,
i.e.
let me just do a Kingdom Hearts fan base PSA. Don't get too wrapped up in your own headcanon. Okay?
Yes.
Don't smell your farts to the point you're addicted to them, okay? None of us know what's coming. None of us know where this is going. We're all throwing shit at the wall and talking about it, and it just happens to be a lot of fun. And sometimes some of us get something right, but none of us know where this is going. How many
Right.
people had versus 13 collision theories 10 years
A
ago?
lot.
How many people had World of Fiction theories 10 years ago? How many people had Master of Masters theories back during Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories? Nobody. None of us know where this is going.
Right. And we never know what they're going to change along the way.
That too. I mean, one thing I always think about is like if you do look at a lot of old Nomura interviews, he says it was always his plan for Versus 13 and Kingdom Hearts to collide. That Noctis at the time, who we now know as Yuzora, but Noctis was created as a parallel to Sora. Like everything that Noctis is came from being a mirror image of Sora. So he always had these plans to collide them, whether it was going to be canon with the actual Versus 13 or it was going to be your typical Kingdom Hearts Final Fantasy crossover. I don't know. But I do know it was always sort of his plan to collide these two. And did you play Final Fantasy 15 by chance?
Nope. The only Final Fantasy I have played is Crystal Chronicles.
Gotcha.
And that is very new.
Gotcha.
Like new to me.
Crystal Chronicles is a great game, so
Yeah, I enjoy it.
thumbs up there. But like, there's some overlap I can't help but ignore, right? So I'll fill you in. Final Fantasy 15, which I'm sure you know by now, was originally Versus 13, got retooled, whatever. So
Yes.
the party members had particular quirks about them that led to side quests in the game. You had
Okay.
Prompto, who enjoyed
Yes.
taking photos, and you
And
had
talking about keys.
yeah, and you had Ignis, who enjoyed cooking. So,
Oh.
but what are your sort of side quest mechanics in Kingdom Hearts 3? Taking
Yeah,
photos,
the Ratatouille.
exactly,
yeah.
finding ingredients and taking photos. So you already can kind of see the roots of it there.
Yeah.
What do you make of the Versus 13 stuff overall? Is it something that excites you? Is it something that worries you? Because some people are worried that Kingdom Hearts is just going to turn into Versus 13, which I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't either.
I think what you might see is that through Kingdom Hearts, Versus 13 concepts will be revived. I think that's what you're in for. I don't think you're in for this transformation of the brand.
So there are two sides to me. There's Pajama Let's Play, where I have to back up the things I say. And then there's Michelle, who indulges in the wild theories. So Pajama Let's Play is very much focused on that NDA. And let's not get our hopes up. Michelle, on the other hand, has done, like, I really did do a deep deep dive on this, and my main takeaway was that game was Nomura's heart and soul. He
Yeah.
put everything into it. So I would love for him to just, give Square a big FU and include it in Kingdom Hearts. Let him conclude that story the way as close to the way he wanted to as he could, and give all of the fans the game we were promised but never got. Because 15, I hear, was not as good.
As someone who really enjoyed 15, there's still a void in my soul for Versus 13.
Yeah.
I will say this. I think you're not going to get a direct revival. NDA in mind,
Right.
you're not going to get a direct revival. But I think it's weird I'm going to word this very strangely, so forgive me. But I do believe Nomura's kind of getting off on the idea that Sora and his ability to bring people back from the dead and save hearts, that he's literally using Sora to save the heart of his world. I think there's a part of him that sees a lot of beauty in that, and so that that's part of what Kingdom Hearts has become. And like, I don't know, I think that
waking.
yeah, it's literally the power of waking, and like all that fourth wall stuff. Like that, I think that's why we're in Quadratum. I think that's why we're literally in Square Enix's headquarters backyard. I think it's a wink and a nod to be like, so if I can't save my baby project child, Sora's gonna do it because he can, because he's proven he can in the Dark Seeker saga. And I don't know, maybe I'm just a sicko, but I'm all here for that. I'm all here for that.
I would love to see, I would love to see Sora being told to, Yozora being told to save Sora because Sora will in turn save Yozora. I would love to see both of them, be able to help each other out in that way and really bring Versus into Kingdom Hearts. I'm just keeping that on the Michelle side of things.
Keeping that, I got you. On the Michelle side of things, I totally agree with you. I would love to see a story unfold where Sora and Yozora have to work together to save each other. Sora going back to his reality is equal with Yozora remembering the Nameless Star. That they both, they could both help each other. Yozora can help Sora get back to Kairi. Sora can help Yozora get back to the Nameless Star.
Or help the Nameless Star get back to him.
Exactly. This does remind me of another question I had for you. So we have a lot of loose ends in Kingdom Hearts. Just some examples. Mickey going to Scala, Kairi training under Aqua, Ventus needs his memory back, Lorium and Elrena are recompleted and probably looking for Strelitzia. So with all of those moving parts, how do you see Kingdom Hearts 4 unfolding? Because is this just going to be a story that covers Sora, and this is just Sora getting back to where things are, and all those loose ends will be tied up in the future? Or do you think this game is going to space itself out, even though we'll primarily play as Sora? Maybe we get a little section as Aqua and Kairi. Maybe we get a little section as Ventus. How do you see all this unfolding? Because I don't see a way they can do this without flashing back to the old side of reality, if that makes sense.
Right. So what I would do if I were this team, I would have Kingdom Hearts 4 follow Sora and Riku, bring in Master of Masters, young Xehanort, Strelitzia, wrap up those things. But really just keep it in unreality as much as possible. And then I would release separate games that would cover the side things. But Kingdom Hearts 4, I could very easily see them doing a Dream Drop Distance style, maybe a Chain of Memory style, where they can tell both Sora and Riku's story, and you get to play as both.
I'd absolutely love that. What I would want is the majority still to belong to Sora. I think every numbered title, Sora has to be more screen time than anybody. I never want to see that change. However, hear me out. So let's take your idea, but I have an editor's note.
Sure.
So you remember the Kingdom Hearts 2 prologue where you play as Roxas?
Yes.
Give me that 5, 6, 7 hour prologue with Kairi training under Aqua.
See, I would like to have Kairi and Aqua get their own game.
I think they can. I
don't think they will.
You don't think they will?
No, I think Fragmentary Passage counts as Aqua's and Melody of Memory counts as Kairi's.
You
I
know,
don't think they take either of those characters seriously enough to give them a Sora level game.
it's gonna be tough given how many characters there are, but I would have to say I think I disagree with you. I actually do think if not a full Kyrie Aqua game, we're going to get play segments as the two characters a lot from here on out. Because, and this is something I've talked about before, so we had that moveset built out for Aqua in Kingdom Hearts 3. And then we had it further built out for Rebind.
Right.
And as we know, they're porting all these assets from Unreal Engine 4 to Unreal Engine 5. I find it hard to believe that they built out these characters, like Kyrie, for example. She's an even better example than Aqua, because at least Aqua, you do have a base game fight against Vanitas.
Right.
Kyrie, I don't think they went through the trouble to make that entire moveset just for one fight. Now, if she gets a full game, I don't think so. I'm with you on that. I do not think Kyrie and Aqua get their own full-fledged game. I think the best you could hope for is maybe a Dream Drop Distance style thing where you flash back either from Riku to Kyrie or from Ventus to Kyrie, but there's some sort of shared narrative there. But I actually really believe that we very well could see a prologue where you play as Kyrie and Aqua, because it would be the perfect setup for Kyrie to come in during Act 3. Now, I look, this might be copium. I just want to give a little caveat before I stop talking and shut up. Might be copium, but the ending of Melody of Memory foreshadowed that she's going to make some kind of return to help them and to save them. And I think it'd be magnificent if you open Kingdom Hearts 4 with a Kyrie prologue, and then if she crashes the scene at the end of the game. Like,
so what I'd like to see...
Shit on my dreams now. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm not going to shit on him. You're fine. What I would like to see is, like, a game where we have the Wayfinder trio wrapping up all of their stuff, exploring what they do now that no one is in darkness. And then Axel, Kyrie, or I guess Lee, Kyrie, and Issa trying to find Subject X. Because Kyrie doesn't have anything to do right now. They told her to stay behind, and, you know, that's kind of what she does most of the time. So I'd like to see them go search for Subject X, and then she feels Sora calling to her when he needs her, because she's always that light in the darkness that guides him back. So I think she's going to be the one who guides him back to reality under the protection of Riku, because he's Sora's Dream Eater.
That would be amazing. And it would be very on brand for Kyrie, because, you know, I'm a firm believer that you don't need to be good with a weapon to be a good character or to be useful.
Yes. And she could be a healer.
There's a lot of things she could be. There's a lot of, like, that's why I'm so against giving Naminé a Keyblade. I think you'd be doing such a disservice to that character.
She doesn't need one.
She needs to become Ansem the Wise's star pupil. That I would love, because it's a good redemption for Ansem the Wise. There's nobody he wronged more than Naminé. There's nobody that he wronged more than her. And she's got a very unique power that can be really useful in that Radiant Garden lab. I personally would love it if she just became one of the thinkers, right?
Right.
If she becomes one, imagine her in a, first of all, she needs a new outfit, but imagine her in a lab coat. Would it not be adorable? A lab coat and a clipboard? Come on.
I would like to see her right next to a Yenzo, just doing computer stuff together, and, you know, but ultimately what I really want for Naminé is for her to stay close to Roxas, because that was a star-crossed lover situation, and I'm a sucker for a good ending to a love story.
No arguments here. Just put her in a lab coat and, you know,
right?
She can crush on Roxas all she wants.
And if anyone comes to cause trouble, she'll just alter their memories and they'll think they're somewhere else.
That's my thing, man. She's got that's a wild power.
Yeah.
She don't need no Keyblade, man. She doesn't need no Keyblade. Her powers are up here.
Right? She's got something much better than a Keyblade.
Yeah. She can make you forget how to use a Keyblade. Like, that's
or
where Naminé's out.
Or she can implant other people's memories in and have you learn things without actually learning them.
Exactly. Almost like literally like download data into your brain.
Yeah.
Which is pretty
Kind of
wild.
like Assassin's Creed in a way.
Not an Assassin's Creed fan, but I'm going to nod my head and assume you made a great point. We're coming up on an hour, so I do want to open up questions to the chat. I know we had a lot of people throw some stuff in there. I'm not going to be able to scroll all the way back up, so if you have had a question or a comment about what we've been talking about, now's the time to drop it in. But I did want to scroll up because that sicko Treehouse dropped a $2 super chat on us saying to keep up the great work. Dude, thank you very, very, very much. I'll work on getting you a shout out before this is all said and done. I got some bad news for you. So Tom is saying your ship was destroyed when Xehanort came into the picture. What do you got to say for that?
No, I wholeheartedly disagree. Wholeheartedly disagree.
Would you say they give you more of a brother-sister vibe? Is that your take on that angle?
So the two of them are equal and opposite, like in a way that I think transcends anything romantic or platonic for that matter. I think it's something different altogether.
Is it a
Like,
self-love?
They're two parts of the same whole, but that doesn't have to be a romantic connection. It can, I just think that they're the ultimate team. But I think Roxas's heart belongs to Naminé because Kingdom Hearts 2.
Let the shipping wars begin. I personally just want to say, I just want to say personally, I am with you on that one, but I want to give another major shout out to Josh Z, who's dropping a $5 super chat on us, saying when you lose to Data Xehanort, he says, "This is your fate, accept it." And when you win, he says, "This is not what was written." I think he did have a book of prophecies. Interesting.
It's possible. How else would Maleficent have found out about it?
That's where I'm at. Maleficent is such a wild card now because she transcended Kingdom Hearts 3. She literally, in the middle of Kingdom Hearts 3, was like, "Pete, Kingdom Hearts 3 doesn't matter. We have to focus on what comes after." So,
right, we got to find this box that I don't really know what's in it.
Yeah. Which is pretty much interesting. Adonai says, "We just talking to each other because we're all smart people with beautiful faces." Well, thank you, Adonai. Thank you. Let's see. No ship is stronger than Rindo and Shoka. All right, World Ends With You fans, if you're out there. Not going to disagree with that. Here we go. Just a Waffle, cousin of Pancake, which, do you miss Just a Pancake? I miss him every day.
Yes, I do. But I've thoroughly enjoyed having Just a Waffle in all of the streaming chats.
Me too. I honestly think he might be a portal to bring back Just a Pancake. Like, he could be the Kyrie to Just a Pancake Sora. Just a Waffle says, yes, question, does anyone ship Ienzo and Naminé? Because working together for Naminé, no. I'm with you. No. Nah.
If I'm being completely honest, I'd really like to see Ienzo and Demix. I think they'd make a cute couple.
I would enjoy their banter. I think they'd have some fun banter.
Ienzo taking everything seriously and Demix being like, "Come on, man, just let the water dance."
DJ Ghoul, Sage of the Lodge, says Nomura hinted that Maleficent learned more from darkness than we realized. That's right. He did say something like that in an interview, that she learned more from him than we even know now.
Which makes sense. We didn't see all of it. They had that whole time between getting from her tower to the computer and the Ark.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of people sleep on the fact that off-screen interactions are assumed in this series. Like, there's a lot of assumption of off-screen interaction.
Yes.
But man, I mean, what do you make of them making darkness a character? Like, literally taking the Kingdom Hearts meme of darkness and literally making it a tangible character. Do you play that up to self-awareness or running out of ideas?
So I think that also kind of alludes to, this is going to completely I can't think of the word, but it'll be contradictory to previous statements. But that the Master of Masters is the personification of light as much as we have a personification of darkness.
I've believed that for a very, very, very long time. I do not need any convincing. I think it's heavily implied that he's a personification of the light and that he is going to, just like Xehanort was there to demonstrate what too much darkness looked like, he's going to be there to demonstrate what too much light looks like.
Ericus on steroids.
Ericus. Which, can you imagine like a super buff Ericus?
Oh my god.
I think that's what his design needed.
He would have actually taken out Ben.
And that's the thing. I feel like that was one of the first times in the series, that scene where it was very heavily implied, like, hey, this is not as simple as light good, darkness bad. Because even though Terra didn't end up with the best moral compass at the end of Birth by Sleep, him standing in to defend Ven using darkness, it's hard to make a case that what he did was wrong. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
I look at that and I'm like, that was the right thing to do. Ericus was trying to murder a child, like using light.
Over hearsay.
Over hearsay. Yes, exactly. Noct Flugel says, isn't it funny that in Final Fantasy 15, Prompto references Kingdom Hearts being a game, and now we have the same concept? Could be a coincidence. I almost wonder if that Final Fantasy 15 voice line was like a sort of tip of the cap, like, see, Nomura, some of your ideas are still here. Kingdom Hearts exists in this world. Like, I don't know. I think so.
I'm hoping that they're connected. I'm also hoping that Demix is somehow the nobody of a Prompto that had his heart removed, just like Yzora's.
I do. I just realized, Michelle, I forgot to ask you the question. I keep forgetting to ask people the question until we get to 1 hour in. But
that's okay.
Yeah, while we're here, we can let questions pile up. So can you tell us, like, you obviously have a deep love for the series. Anyone who's been to your channel can see it. You have such a profound love for Kingdom Hearts. Can you tell us why? Like, why Kingdom Hearts? There's a million franchises. There's a million mediums of entertainment. Why this?
So this is 2 parts. Firstly, it came into my life at a very important time. When I was starting to discover who I am and what I want and what I'm not going to tolerate, so that lovely age of 20 when you think you know everything. So it did help me maintain joy when I needed it. So there's that. Second, I tend to do shadow work or, healing from trauma and things through series and shows and games and music. Like, they all seem to have messages that I can relate to and apply to my life. And Kingdom Hearts is so relatable.
Are you a fan of Carl Jung by chance?
I'm not sure who that is.
Okay, never mind. You continue on.
I'm sorry.
Forget I said anything.
Feel free to let me know over Twitter, though.
Sure, absolutely.
So, every time I watch through the cinematics, I'm like, hey, this is something I'm kind of sort of going through. Like, I made a whole video analyzing Lushu and why it's okay to stay out of people's drama.
I love that. I love that video, by the way. I love that video.
That is 100% me giving myself permission to stay out of people's drama.
And look, we all have our own ways of validating ourselves. And let me tell you, your way of doing it is incredible. So feel free to do that more. Feel free to do that more. Let's see. Let's move on here. Overfoolish says Ericus was a dictator. Tyranny of Light, baby. Drek the Drek says Kairi will get her own game and Roxas will be given something to do. It's copium all around. That's what we do here at the Landy Lodge. I'm here to just dish out copium.
Sometimes I rain on people's parades.
There's a balance. Balance, Ericus. DJ Ghoul says, do you think Game Central Station and Data, I assume maybe and Data World will be important in the future? We touched on that earlier, but let's just spin on it now. I think 100%.
Yeah.
I think 100%.
If unreality is a realm of video games, according to my headcanon, then Game Central Station is probably going to link us to it. Because in the movie, we only saw a handful of games, but there were infinite doors.
Yep.
So we don't know what other games are in there. And I suspect it's all of them.
And it's such a cool concept, too. It's like, it's such low-hanging fruit for the Kingdom Hearts series, the Wreck-It Ralph Game Central Station. They'd be so silly not to pluck it, which I believe that Vanellope is going to be one of the new Princes of Heart. But we'll revisit that at another time. Tom says, are we completely sure the 2 black coats in Kingdom Hearts 4 are Lushu and Master of Masters? We touched on that earlier, and neither one of us is convinced of that.
Nope.
You,
Young Xehanort all the way.
you think it's young Xehanort? I think it could be.
Absolutely.
I think it could either be young Xehanort. I think it could also be Sigurd. Let's not remember Sigurd is a player now, and he was the narrator of these trailers. So
Yeah.
you never know. You never know. But Tom, you're not alone. We're not sold. We're not sold. Just a Waffle says, question 2. Is it possible for Ira coming back to his mansion, being the Twilight Town mansion, which it's a lot of people's headcanon that that's connected to Ira, but the unicorns outside are painting a picture. So I can't blame people for feeling
and there's
that way.
also unicorns inside. So
Yeah, that's right.
it's been a while since I've actually played through and explored his mansion, but I have heard that there's a lot of stuff within the mansion that correlates directly to Ira.
Yeah, and that's something I'm all for too, because then I love it when things get worked back in, right? Like when the Ark made its way back in from Kingdom Hearts 1, it was like, yes! So it's like, if they do that again with the unicorns, it'll be like, awesome. And Just the Waffle's theorizing that it'll send Ira into a wrath to see what they've done to his old building.
Okay, but Ira's sin isn't actually wrath. He was named Wrath, but that's not what he displays. He displays maybe lust for information. No, that's cool.
Ira's more paralleled with his virtue than he is his sin. All the sins have paralleling virtues, and each foreteller either leans more towards the sin or more towards the virtue. You're 100% right in that the virtue that coincides with wrath is patience, right? And if you think about Ira, that's exactly what he embodies, that sort of patience. Yeah. He was patient with Ased. He was able to understand Ased's shortcomings, was very patient with him, tried his best to be patient about the Gula situation. And even when Ava jumped in the way, almost knocked over my drink. Even when Ava got in the way, he was there enough to be like, I'll walk away. I don't want that confrontation. But if you look at a lot of Ira's temptations, he's always tempted by wrath. Like, he needed to see Gula. There was a part of him that was like, I need that lost page. And there was the part of him that when he thought Ased was the traitor, he was ready to rain hell on Ased, but it's only envy that stopped him.
Okay, I can get on board with that.
But you are correct to observe that he's definitely much more on the patient side than the wrath side of things. But I do think he's going to... How do you see the foretellers playing out? Because I don't see that. I see them dispersing over time. I think half of them will abandon the master and half of them will stick around.
So, assuming they're all coming back immediately after the Keyblade War,
yes.
Because it looks like that's what happened, I think Gula is going to take the route of Ava, which I think Ava is Subject X. I do not think Skuld is Subject X. I think it's a red herring.
That's right. We have not unwrapped that. Care to tell us more about Ava being Subject X? Because I am personally convinced that it's Skuld, but I'd love for you to make me a believer that it's Ava. So give me your best pitch right now.
So let's address the elephant in the room that I got called out on first. According to the character file of either Lee or Axel, in one game, in one tiny little sentence, it says he was searching for the girl with black hair. So we can conclude she has black hair, though I can also promise you those reports are not accurate. I did a whole video rereading Lushu's reports after the Union Cross finale, and it's not accurate. It's just not. Anyway, so we know she has black hair. The people who have black hair in this females who have black hair in this series, Skuld, obviously. Xion, and we don't know about the foretellers. So I believe something happened to Ava. Her heart joined with Kairi's because I think she also holds a lot of hearts. And then somehow, when she becomes Subject X, she loses her heart. It joins Kairi's because Kairi's also right there with Subject X. And then because of that, that's why Xion has black hair. Because Ava would have black hair if she's Subject X.
So, couldn't I make the same argument that maybe Ava has blonde hair and that's why Naminé has blonde hair?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're saying it could go either way. Interesting.
Yes.
Because, it's a good point. We don't know a lot about Subject X. A lot of people are taking the dark hairline and sort of rolling with it, that it's Skuld. But you bring up a good point that the foretellers deliberately had their faces and most of their hair colors hidden. Like, I think Ira's really the only one whose hair you can see. But
we know she's the only one missing. And we know that Luciu saved Subject X, which people have pointed out to me that it could be any dandelion because he would be attached. But no, I think it's Ava. That is someone that he talked to about the Master of Masters in the Book of Prophecies, changing fate, avoiding the Keyblade War. Like, they had a really big bonding conversation. And I think he also helped her escape through the datascape, like through like corridors of darkness or whatever he did to escape. So, but I think somehow that led to her going to the agent or to the experiments with Xehanort.
I think you raise a good point that, we know Luciu is the one kind of looking after Subject X.
And
he has more of a history with Ava than he does Skuld. And that's not to say that he doesn't have motive for looking after Skuld. He outright said he would watch over the dandelions. But he does have a much more intimate history with Ava. So the idea that he would want to keep careful watch over her makes a lot more sense.
Her.
Also, like, I'm fully convinced Luciu's going to outright betray the Master, which would give him further motive for wanting to look after Ava, because Ava's clearly someone who does not agree with the Master's viewpoints, and maybe that's why Luciu poked at her a little bit before the Keyblade War. He wanted to see where she was at. Like, oh, this is the Master's plan, Ava. What do you think of that?
And I think he wanted to encourage her to change fate.
And do we know the outcome of their battle?
We know that once their Keyblades struck, the
Keyblade War started.
And then that was the end we saw of the two of them together, I think, ever.
Yeah, so we don't know who won that fight. It's very possible Luciu knocked her out and then was able to put her through the whole Subject X venture. Because we don't know we know Luciu didn't get killed. Like, that's what we know.
It's also possible that in hearing the bell toll, they realized what had happened and they just stopped. Well, saying, "Oh no, the Keyblade War is starting now."
Oh, wait a minute. Also, this might also help connect when he's like, "I guess Ava didn't make it after all." And then
that she had a mission to complete and she did it.
And she carried it out.
There you go.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's very possible that she's the true dandelion, and that him sending her away like that, maybe that's how her heart gets lost, and
I'll say this. I'm not fully convinced, but you've gotten me to stop thinking it's for sure Skuld. You've casted a lot of doubt on the Skuld theory. I'll tell you that.
We saw her. She's older with baby Xehanort.
Do you really think that's her? Do you really think that's her?
I really do.
She's Mama Nort.
I think she and Ephemer made it together, and they did the Adam and Eve thing. I also think it's Ephemer in the cloak, because the three of them are a trio with Player, Skuld, and Ephemer.
You got my wheels turning. Because Mama Nort does look like Skuld. And
exactly like Skuld, but a little bit older.
Ephemer would have that silver hair gene. Know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And again, they're
very
a trio.
Interesting.
Like, the trios always stay together.
Whoa! Okay, it just clicked. Because, if Player reincarnated into Xehanort, and if Xehanort's the offspring of Skuld and Ephemer, then the trio never split up.
Broke up.
And now there's that payoff that I want.
Yep. And then Ephemer comes back to help Sora during the Keyblade War with Xehanort. Skuld, I don't know. Maybe she's Kyrie's grandmother.
This is cool. Okay. I think you might have pulled me over to the other side. Now that you gave Skuld, because I was like, then what is Skuld? Where's Skuld? But now that you gave her that could work.
I'm kind of doing an Occam's razor with Skuld. The simplest solution is they showed us exactly what happened to her.
Yeah, for all we know. That's something.
which would mean Ava is subject X.
Because she would be the only one left.
Right. It can't be Envy. Envy got summoned.
Yep. Oh wow, you really might be onto something there. That's cool. That's cool. That's why we brought you on. That's why we brought you on. Right there, everybody. Let's get back to the chat. CNV says, I'm a fan of both of you. Well, thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you, CNV. Axel Vega says, do you
Axel.
think when Xehanort split the worlds, i.e. Nexus from which all worlds spring, he split the hearts of everyone into light and darkness as well? Ooh. Almost like everyone got severed off. Interesting.
The main thing when he split the world is that there's no one left in the world of light. So I would think that he created a world without humans, and that maybe that's his light version, because humans are kind of terrible.
Fair enough. Jashish says, makes me feel like my Ralph Breaks Kingdom Hearts theory will come into play somehow, some way. Yes, my man Jashish has a great theory about that. Had him on the podcast for it. That Ralph overall, like, he has the ability to really mix this thing up, you might say. Quick shout out for my man Josh, who was last just hanging out in his streams. He's a great guy, supporter of the channel. Nox Flugel says, I think Kingdom Hearts 4 might adopt the chapter structure like Final Fantasy VII Remake. That way we could jump between each universe every now and then. And again, in a world where Nomura says he's going to mix up the formula, it's things like that that get me thinking.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot.
I also think we need a new narrative structure. Like the gummy ship in between Disney worlds, it was good, but we really need something new and different. And I think chapters, like dividing it up like that, will make the story very digestible.
Yes, I totally agree.
Matt Holmes says, how do we feel about the fairy godmother?
Oh my goodness, I have so many thoughts about her.
I'll tell you this. I think Yen Sid, Merlin, and the fairy godmother have their own freaking secret club where they know about the world of fiction. They know about all of this. They have a copy of the Book of Prophecies. They're
a trio.
Yes, they are, exactly.
It's very clear that they are a trio.
Yep. They know more than they let on. Merlin has like the most mind-blowing magic of all time where he can store you away frozen in time while the world carries on. Oh, what did that hit? That hit something in you.
I actually looked into Final Fantasy worlds that could be that training world, and I actually consulted Axel Vega about it. I can't remember the name of it, but there is a world in Final Fantasy where like everything is in history or something, and it's a telephone game and it's all like filled with lush stuff. I'm not doing this justice.
Might have been one that I missed because nothing's coming to my head.
It started with an I.
Nothing's coming to my head off the top. But I'm glad you shared the sentiment that you think that they got their own like little Illuminati club over in the back.
Yeah, and that Yen Sid can do literally anything. So, and he doesn't even need a book of prophecies to tell the future. He specifically says the stars tell him the future. So, just putting that out there.
Just putting that out there. And I don't want to go off too much on a tangent. Cody Goins in the chat, my man, says, Ira seems very calm. Yes, patience. He has patience.
Yes.
That's his strength. Let's just hope he doesn't get manipulated out of it. Square Pear, one of the best names on the platform, says, the drink got in the way, but Landy had patience, not wrath. He's definitely Ira. Oh, when I knocked the drink. Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh, God, Landy is Ira confirmed. Okay. I mean, you could be worse things. You could be Pete. Kid Q says the 20th anniversary is a clue. Look at foreteller positions. I think that's about when we were talking about the foretellers kind of diverging. If you look, Ira and Envy are looking forward with the master, but Aset is looking off to the side. Lushu's tucked in the corner. Ava and Gula are looking off to the side. So I guess...
Well, Ira and Envy are the only two that didn't question the master's orders.
Because they were given a lot of power in their roles. Like, Ira got to be the leader. Of course he's not going to question the master, you know?
And the other got to be the snitch who just never got her stitches.
The snake.
Yes.
Although I got to appreciate Envy. There's two things that make me appreciate Envy. One, when Ava was basically like, yo, you're a bitch, she's like, I'm sorry, I overstepped. Lots of respect for that right there. Also, when Aset was throwing a tantrum, she went back to Ira and was like, Aset can't be the traitor because he still believes in the light. So I could give her some credit, even though she's a snake, that she can accept others' differences and not just immediately assume that they're the devil.
Right.
So I'll give her a little bit of credit. Gotta give credit where credit's due.
And I think Gula would have blindly followed a little better if he didn't know there was a traitor.
Yes, 100%. That's what's got his head spinning like crazy. Over Foolish says, since we don't know if Ava has black hair, she very well could be Subject X. Hey, you gotta believe her.
Right?
You gotta believe her. DJ Ghoul says, if the foretellers are the black pieces, will their darkness overtake them? I mean, that's the Master's plan, is to use them as
Yeah.
vessels for darkness, so I'd assume so.
Right. And he strengthened their hearts to darkness so that they wouldn't actually be possessed by it.
Exactly. Just a Waffle with question 3 says, will we be able to visit Destiny Islands to explore the main island, meeting the likes of Sora's mom and the mayor who adopted Kyrie?
I don't think so.
I think if you do, it's going to be at the very end of the saga. And it'll be some sort of DLC epilogue sort of stuff. I think that's like, there's so much going on. We don't have time for lunch.
I think the best we can hope for is a mod.
Yeah, that too. Which bless the mods out there. Let me tell you.
Right?
Bless the mods for what they've
They
done.
definitely do God's work.
Exactly. And let me tell you, I really think companies would be able to get away with a lot more DLC if it wasn't for modders. But because of the modders, honestly, I'm just impressed they let it fly. Like that there's that whole Olympus Coliseum mod out there for KH3. Basically this whole DLC structure, and Square's just like, cool, moving on. Respect.
We don't want to put in that kind of work, so thanks for doing it.
Yeah, yes. I feel like everybody wins. I feel like it's a beautiful timeline. We're in one of the better timelines.
And it gets more people to buy the game so that they can use the mods.
Exactly. The mods almost become a selling point for the PC version of the game.
Absolutely. That's why Steam always has creators that are good with mods.
It's a working ecosystem. Axel Vega says, Axel was projecting the image of Subject X onto the puppet, which has memories of Kyrie from Sora, black hair, and Kyrie's face, along with Sora's memories escaping into Xion, turning her into Sora. Now, I don't know how much of that is confirmed, but that is something I've always kind of subscribed to. I always figured the reason, because Xion, everyone projects a look onto Xion, but this canon look that we get is what Axel sees, right? Because Axel is the first one to see the human in Xion. That's the way I've always sort of interpreted it.
See, I always thought it was Roxas's view of her.
I think it becomes one and the same. I think both of them have the same view of her. And to be fair, actually, Roxas sees her face first. It's not until later that Axel sees it. So actually, I wonder if that can be more attributed on Roxas than Axel. Eric Palomar asked, who do you guys think the Lost Master arc refers to? I would think it's the Master of Masters. But what if there's could you imagine that there's someone pulling strings out there that we have no conception of yet?
So this also kind of takes me back to the Keyblade Wars Ragnarok thing, or a parallel to Ragnarok. Anyway, and that the Lost Masters would be those who perished in the Master of Masters Keyblade War. They were lost. Except for clearly his apprentices, because somehow they came into being.
You ever think that maybe there was something in the box that helped Lucio revive them? That could be a hint of what's in the box?
I think what's in the box is hope from 13.
Wait. Because I did a whole thing on this. I don't know how much you know about Pandora's box in Greek mythology.
Yes, very much.
So you're on that wave that within Pandora's box is hope. And
all mythology is my jam.
Beautiful. Then you're in the right place. So you think literally hope from Final Fantasy Versus 13 is in the box?
Not Versus, but yes.
Not Versus 13. Final Fantasy 13 with lightning and
that was
and Zaz.
Actually my very first video ever was that they specifically say the box contains hope.
Yep. Luxord tells you that.
And then we have a character in Final Fantasy 13 who just happens to be able to time travel, and therefore giving the Master of Masters the ability to time travel because he has access to Hope's heart. Or it's the Book of Prophecies, like the original Book of Prophecies. That could be in the box. I don't know.
I subscribe to the theory that the darknesses are in the box. And that's what the hope is. Because if you contextualize hope in the Master of Masters' eyes, what's the hope? his plan working out. The darkness is going into the vessels and then being taken out subsequently from there. That's how I always interpreted it. Because, like, whose hope is it? It's the it's the master's box. It's his idea of hope. What would his idea of hope be?
But his hope all lies in the dandelions. So then it would make more sense for it to be maybe the true dandelion. But no, that can't be. Never mind. Because the box happens before all that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But who knows? Time could be a flat circle with something like the Book of Prophecies floating around.
Right?
You never know.
Never
Just a
know.
Waffles back. Question 4. Will Sora go to school and get a job? I think he's talking about Quadratum and if he's going to like be part of like the normal ecosystem. Paying taxes for rent. Honestly, it would be kind of funny if there was like a rent aspect to the game and that like you had to run odd jobs or side quests before
Maybe
moving.
there's an Animal Crossing aspect to it.
I am all for if you let me decorate that apartment, I'm going to be so happy. That's such good post game. It makes me think of the hideouts from like Pokemon, the old Pokemon,
Or
Ruby and Sapphire, the hideouts you used to be able to build. I'd love a
There's
function
also
like that.
the homes in Star Wars: The Old Republic. They have little homes that you can put all your stuff in, and
Yes. I mean, I'm all for that. And honestly, that would be, because to me, I don't know about you, I'm a tough sell on side quests in video games. I find myself, depending on the game, there's certainly been games I've maxed out completely, joyously so. But many games, I see what the side quest is, I see what the reward is, and I just go, nah, fam. Like, I'm not about to go play fetch just to get a few extra, like, Kingdom Hearts bucks or something, you know? Like, I'm not about to go play fetch for that. But if you make side quests my ability to make my apartment look cooler, then I'm going to do every side quest. Like, to me, that's a real incentive. Instead of giving me things that I can earn from combat or things I can earn from the story, if you actually can tie side quests to making post-game more enjoyable, I think that's the best way to sell people on it.
yeah. Because I'm definitely the type of girl that just rushes my way through the gigas in Toy Box and hope I don't die.
Yeah, the only reason I came back to Gigas and Toy Box was to get the trophy.
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
When
same
I had
with
the platinum.
like the sledding mini game and stuff like that too. Because like,
Oh my
what's
God,
the
that was
reward?
the
What's the
worst.
reward of that, right? Like, what's the reward of that sledding game? You get like what, a piece of armor and like a PlayStation trophy. Imagine,
And an ability and
imagine you got a new outfit for Sora.
yeah.
I don't know. That's the kind of stuff that does it for me. That's like, as far as getting
I
me to do a
don't-
side quest, that's the stuff that does it for me.
I don't care about the aesthetics nearly as much as I care about the lore.
I'm with
But
you
then
there,
again-
but do you really want, how much lore do you want tied behind side quests?
I mean, it would make me do them.
But then
Yeah.
here's where I'll fancy you one. So you unlock a secret report by doing a side quest.
Oh, I would totally do that. I'd be all
Instead
into
of just
it.
giving it to you for beating the game, maybe now you have to do these side quests to unlock them. Honestly,
I
I was just gonna say I would personally actually enjoy that.
am a huge collector. Like, I love collecting trophies and stamps and all of the things in the games.
Yeah, depending on the
Like-
game, I can get like that.
I'm not an IRL collector, just an in-game collector.
Get just an in-game. It's much easier that way. Save space.
And
DJ
money.
Ghoul says they could always introduce a new character and missing link that ends up being Subject X, which that
They
would.
could.
I feel like that would be such a troll, and I'd love it. I would love it if they trolled everyone. Like, you never knew who Subject X was. What are you people thinking?
Maybe Subject X is Stella.
Yeah, could be. Noctflugel asks, "What's the deal with Scala? Why are there two of them?" What's your take on that?
So, I'm pretty sure that the Scala in Kingdom Hearts 3 is a false Scala, that it's made by Xehanort.
Like a data Scala? Oh wait, no. Sorry. Xehanort's
a
like heart in his
alternate-
heart. Yeah.
Well, kind of like the way that he splits Toy Box as young Xehanort.
Okay.
You know, he makes two
Same idea.
Yeah. So he would have taken Scala, removed all the people, which probably has something to do with removing all the darkness because people have darkness. And that the Victorian style Scala is the true Scala.
You don't think it's possible that one is just like Scala in the past?
I mean, anything's possible.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I'm
But
kind of, I don't really have an opinion because I really don't know. I have to wait for it to unfold. But it really could be anything. Adonai says they all go through different times, right? We see Ephemer emerge alone from what I remember. I don't know if Skuld was with him. That's the thing is we don't know. We only know what they've shown us, but Kingdom Hearts is known to keep things off screen until they're
and they
ready to
didn't
show you.
and they didn't show us what happened to Skuld. Like they didn't show her pod at
Yeah,
all.
she also could have been transferred to like Scala 10 years from that moment, right?
Yeah.
And she could have just landed in like a Scala that was
Which
still building itself up.
which if Ephemer is the one in the blue cloak, that would explain why Skuld is so much younger.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. Exactly. All right. Axel Vega says Yensid is defense, Merlin is magic, and Fairy Godmother is strength. She is strength because in the realm of Kingdom Hearts, your heart is your strongest point of reference. I kind of like that.
I would also correlate the fairy godmother with memory.
Yes.
I
Because
don't know what that would do for the other two, but she
I,
seems to be all about memory and dreams. And we know that sleep and memory are connected. So,
yes.
because every time someone loses their memories, they go to sleep.
The realms of sleep and death touch. I also feel like if everyone loses their memories of you, then you might as well be dead. You know, it's kind of that same idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have a question from We're Foolish. What if the foreteller names are the exact counter of their personalities? It's a I think it's a spectrum. I think every foreteller is not might be named after the sin, but it corresponds with that sin's virtue. And I think both of them, like I think a set is a great example because his sin is sloth, and then you're like sloth. He's the most rambunctious animated one. What are you talking about? Well, his corresponding virtue is diligence. So, when you think about that split, he was diligent with his own ambitions, but he was a sloth with the role the master gave him. He no longer was about pushing Ira in the right direction. He threw away the master's ideas entirely. It was like, he's not here anymore. We're doing this my way. He was a
To be
complete sloth.
fair,
Yeah, go ahead.
the real instruction of the Master of Masters was to mutiny Ira, which he executed to the best of his ability. But also, we know that the Master of Masters is the one who named them, that those aren't their
Yes.
original names. And everything he did was to grow the darkness within their hearts. So he created confusion. He misnamed them. Like, I really think Ased's core sin is wrath. You know, that's just me, though. And I think envy is pride. Anyway, so on and so forth. But I think he did that to make them be like, well, if I'm supposed to be wrathful, then why am I so envious? And then trying to fight their inner nature because clearly the master saw this thing in me, but I don't feel that. So that creates more darkness. And then he introduces the concept of a traitor and secret roles and just getting ready for that main darkness entity that they're going to house.
See, I always felt like he named them based on the darknesses that they would house.
Maybe.
Yeah, because I mean, if you look at all the foretellers, they're guilty of multiple sins. They're not just guilty of the sins that they're named after. And usually it's a matter of like one sin leading to another. Whereas naming them as far as like to confuse them, I don't know, because I feel like that would have played out in the dialogue, right? Like maybe they might have said like, why am I this way when this way? But also like, for all we know in the Kingdom Hearts universe, the name Ased is just a name. Like it
Right.
doesn't translate to anything as far as they know.
Latin might not exist there.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the other thing, right? Maybe it's a whole manifestation technique because this was a world where it was only light. There was no darkness. So giving these
Right.
foretellers these dark names was almost like a way to sort of start to let it bleed in. And you
Right.
know,
And masks to hide their identities, not only from, the Keyblade wielders, but also from each other.
yeah. Are you familiar with the Divine Comedy or Dante's Inferno at all?
Yes.
So, do you remember when he gets to the pit of hell and it's ice cold, and at the layer of the source of hell is betrayal, right?
Yes.
He had to confront his own betrayal of Beatrice. Betrayal is what lies at the center of hell. Isn't that
Right.
funny that like what brought darkness into Daybreak Town was this talk of a traitor, this talk of betrayal? Like that was the sin from which all the other sins sprung
I
from.
like that.
Yeah.
I have a subscriber who submitted a theory that beyond the darknesses is something bigger that would be titled malice. because of the way the Master of Masters talks about malice. Her
Yeah.
name is Hillary. We love her.
Oh, is it Hillary Slack?
Yes.
Yeah, she leaves the best comments on my
I
videos,
know.
man. From the
I
beginning,
know.
too. She was commenting on my video when nobody was watching my videos. So,
Like,
I got
one
nothing but love for
comment,
Hillary Slack.
one comment inspired like 4 videos for me. So,
No, she's great. Reading her if any of you see a Hillary Slack comment on a video, you best read more and really take that in.
and give it a thumbs up,
That
because
too.
not only is it good for her because she knows that, we agree with her, but it's good for the algorithm for Landy.
For all of us. For all of us. Twilight Blaze, Sage of the Lodge, says, that's what I've been saying, Landy. The Lost Master could be someone named Superbia. If Master Master's name was Superbia, we would have been able to deduct that by now. And I'm kind of
Well, it
with
was
him
on
there.
the box.
Yeah, it's on. That's the thing. It's too in your face. Like they like to
Yeah.
string along the mystery, and it's like if you're gonna name them all after sins and then have the master be the 7th one and put Superbia on the box, then to me that's making it so obvious who he is. Which is why I'm with Twilight here. I think it's kind of a mislead, and that there's someone else is gonna fill that 7th sin, and I don't think it's gonna be the masters. But if it is, it makes sense.
I could see it either way.
Oh, Agent Spacely, my man, says, I assume the Lost Master is in reference to Ava, since she's truly lost compared to the Master of Masters, who Lucian may know where he is. That's a great point.
Yeah.
That is a great
Even
point.
though she's absolutely Subject X.
Well, I mean, it's Agent X Spacely who commented, so the synchronicities.
Hey, there we go.
There it is. There it
I'm
is.
not 1,000% tied to that theory, just so you know.
Square. I'm just gonna say square pair. I think you'd appreciate this. Pajama has the best theories that I don't agree with.
Oh, thank you.
Which is like a really good compliment, by the way.
Yeah, I'll take it.
It's a compliment to your imagination, that's for sure. I think
My secret is most of them are from my subscribers, and I just research them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, there's so many people commenting on my YouTube videos that should just be making YouTube videos. Like,
I know, but
guys,
they don't want to do that.
listen, guys, it doesn't matter if the editing is shit. The editing could be such dog shit. But if you have a good idea, the good idea alone can be enough. You'll get better at editing as it goes on. Worry about that later. It's about the ideas, man. That's what I try to tell everybody. Is like, the ideas are the most important thing.
Agreed.
Maria says, I think Nomura talked about the possibility of the custom apartment. Very vaguely. Not enough that I'm going to start running with it, but very vaguely. Let's see. We are coming up on time, guys, so I can only get to a few more questions here. I don't know if you see any that are standing out to you that you want to hop on.
I actually don't see the chats at all. I'm only in the Zoom.
That is okay. Twilight Blaze asks, how would you feel about unlocking Keyblades through side quests? I mean,
I'd be fine with that.
You effectively do that already with Kingdom Hearts 3. There's a couple of those, like you get Oathkeeper from doing all the Lucky Emblems, and you get Ultima from doing a bunch of stuff, and from like exploring pirates and stuff. I'm all for more of that. Of that. Don't lock them all behind side quests, but put some goofy ones there. Like make a goofy Keyblade that you unlock by, I don't know, doing some crazy side quests.
Well, they had the goofy shield with taking a picture of the anvil.
Yeah.
Or no, doing the lava dripping thing.
In Olympus?
Yes.
Yes.
In 3.
Gotcha. Yeah, I do remember that. Nicholas Bloom asks, what worlds do you think Kairi and Aqua would explore?
Cinderella. I feel like that's right up their alley. And like having the fairy godmother there to help protect them.
I don't think we're going
Or show them the
backwards
way.
anymore.
Hope not. I could see them getting in the Star Wars world that we're going to get.
You don't sound enthused.
I'm not. Because with Star Wars comes Marvel. And with Marvel comes Michelle getting frustrated. So I have a lot of thoughts, and that's
I'm with you. I'm with you a little bit. I want Star Wars more than I want Marvel. If I could have one, I'd pick Star Wars just because Nomura's a big Star Wars fan. There's a lot of thematic overlap. So I think that's more compatible.
Xemnas has lightsabers.
Xemnas is lightsabers. Master Ericus is Luke Skywalker. There's the overlap there that I could see. Marvel gets tricky because there's just so much, and like I'm not a big multiverse guy. I don't like the idea that there's just multiverses and that like, oh, there's an infinite amount of Spider-Man and there's an infinite amount
and all of the variants and all that.
Yeah, all that. Oh, this happened this way and that way, and in this timeline this happened, in this timeline that happened. What I actually love about Kingdom Hearts is we have one timeline. Like, there's not Sora and then alternate universe Sora where he becomes a bad guy because somebody stole his breakfast. I don't know. I'm spitballing.
There might be alternate timelines when it comes to whether or not you beat Yuzora. That might have created.
We might, but I think Nomura in an interview clarified that there's only going to be one canon ending to those. And the reason why there's two is because he assumed most people would not be able to beat Yuzora. So he wanted to give those people a cutscene to watch, something to watch.
Okay. And also when it comes to Marvel, Disney has established that everything in their multiverse is canon. So as long as they're working on a series, they're not going to let anyone else deviate from it. We saw that with a show called Once Upon a Time. They brought in Frozen, but they weren't allowed to change anything because Frozen 2 was in development. So until Marvel is done, like Star Wars now is, with the trilogy at least, they can't.
There's not a whole lot they can work with. No, I'm with you there. I mean, the good news with Star Wars is what we saw looked like Endor and looks like an ATST. Which is episode.
And I do think it's going to go from 6 to 9.
I almost, call me crazy, I want the Nomura trilogy. Give me 3 Star Wars appearances in the whole series. Just give me.
I promise you it'll be better.
I agree. I think Nomura would do a much better job than anything we've seen post original trilogy.
I saw 7, saw it was a direct repeat of
4.
Exactly. And was like, okay, I'm done with this. You're doing girl power for the sake of girl power. You don't have new stories. Okay, I'm good.
Yeah, no, I tapped out after episode 8. I was just uninterested. As someone, I do love Star Wars. I do, but the sequels just didn't grab me the way even the prequels were able to. But before we upset any sequel stan accounts out there, Twilight Blaze asked, why not have a mix of everything you guys are talking about for the side quest incentives, like keyblades, decorations, secret reports, smaller items like accessories and armor? I'm all for it. Just give me better incentives. Don't make me do it for a PlayStation trophy. I really could give a shit. Square Pair says, yeah, but if they didn't show her, then why would they randomly show her in Scala then? They might as well have shown her come out the pod since they'd all. I guess talking about Skald, then why didn't they show Skald in Scala?
Because they're giving us theory fodder.
Theory fodder, and like Kingdom Hearts withholds their hand for as long as they're willing to.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh man, we have so many have come in, and there's no way I'm going to be able to get to all of them. We're coming up on like an hour and 45, so I apologize for anyone who's dropped in questions that we haven't been able to answer. But the good news is, Pajama Let's Play goes live. I go live. Next time you see that, drop in there and ask us your questions. We're always here for that. You also could find us both on Twitter if you want to throw your questions that way. I just feel bad I can't get to everybody's, but there's so many in here, and we're coming up on 2 hours. And I want to give you some time to give any sort of final piece, anything we haven't talked about yet. Is there anything you wanted to get into that we haven't addressed here yet today?
I don't think so. Not that I can think of. Like, I'm kind of one of those people that, like, you ask me a question and I can go off on a tangent, but all of the big stuff we tend to talk about early.
Okay, then overall, how are you feeling about Phase 2 of Kingdom Hearts? And do you think what we are heading towards is better than what's come? Or do you think Phase 1 is always going to be like a band's first album? It's always going to be, top of the notch, most unique. Or do you think Kingdom Hearts' best days are ahead of them?
I think Phase 3 is going to be the best phase. I think Phase 2 is going to be wrapping up all the nonsense they pulled with Phase 1, like these various trios. And then Phase 3 is going to focus on the foretellers, the Master of Masters, Darkness, all of that. So I'm looking forward to that because that's the storyline I actually care about.
No, I'm with you. I think Phase 2 ends, at least as far as the 3D games go, Kingdom Hearts 4 is the end of Phase 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's good to know.
I think so. If you look at the map they laid out, I don't think there's a spot left anymore. I think all the spots are getting filled in. I think some of the, like, you know how there's like the lower timeline at the bottom? I think a couple of those are open, but I think all the big ones are covered. I could be wrong about that. But overall, I think I loved Phase 1. I think Xehanort was a fun villain. I think all the stories that were told and all the characters introduced all have their unique things to love about them. But I'm way more invested in what's going on now than I was then. Like, everything with the Master of Masters foretellers and Yozora, to me, is infinitely cooler than Xehanort and the organization. No shade.
Agreed.
No shade.
Yes.
I loved Xehanort. But I think all of this, to me, is just so much cooler and more interesting. So I think the best stuff is ahead of us. I really do.
And we still need to figure out what Demyx and Luke's sword have to do with the ancient Keyblade War.
I think outside of that, I think the significance of those four being in a scene, Laurium, Elrena, Luxord, and Demyx, I think those are candidates for Darkness Vessels.
Oh.
Because when you think about it, when you think about Elrena and Laurium, they could easily be manipulated. How do you manipulate them? Do something to Strelitzia. Do something. You use that as your bargaining chip, and you could use them as Darkness Vessels, because they've got some spots to fill.
Yeah,
you know?
tell them that Strelitzia is in unreality, and then they're like, I'm sorry, where?
Where?
Well, follow me and you'll find out.
Exactly,
okay,
exactly.
Here's my heart.
Which, can you imagine? And that's one of the things I love about Kingdom Hearts, is they're very good about letting the player know more than the characters. So when you see a character being manipulated in real time, you're almost like, oh, honey, no, don't listen to him.
That's my whole experience playing as Terra. I'm like, why? Why? Did you not just hear her talk to the mirror about casting dark magic? Why are you trusting her?
Exactly. It's something, to me, I always enjoy it when the player or the observer is more clued in than the characters. I think that's one of the things that makes Days...
irony.
I think that's what makes Days so enjoyable, right?
Yeah.
Because you're able to understand what's going on with Roxas and Shion, but literally nobody else is.
Right.
You know? But with all that said, with everything we've covered, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me.
I literally cannot recommend your channel enough. I can't remember when the first time I heard about it was. It was either when Sonny Novus mentioned you in his video, or it's when you covered my Rule of Four theory. My memory's a little foggy, so I can't remember which came first.
I think they were around the same time.
Yeah, it was
because
very
a lot of people were reaching out being like, hey, I made a channel. You should check it out because you inspired it. I'm like, okay, sure. Let's respond to your theories. Maybe we can all grow together.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that's really unique and cool about your channel, which, by the way, everyone, I've gone and dropped her link into the chat, both on YouTube and Twitch. Make sure you follow. She's coming up on 1,000 subscribers. I'd love to help her close that gap. Your channel, that's such bullshit, by the way, that your channel hasn't reached that threshold. But anyway,
these things take time.
It takes time, but the quality of your content has long surpassed the monetization hurdle, in my opinion.
Thank you.
But I think one thing that's so unique about your channel is it really feels like community discussion, which is something I'm actually trying to work towards. But I think it's something that you've had under control for a long time already, where whether it's one of your videos or it's one of your live streams, it's always this feeling of community discussion. And I think that's special because I think, look, we're all in this together. We're all on the Nomura's crazy ride together. We might as well share some information with each other.
Yes, absolutely. And honestly, you can only come up with your own theories for so long before you get burnt out and pressured. So the way I chose to combat it was people are sending me their theories. Let's get consent to give them credit and make it into a video. I don't have to do as much thinking that way. So, and then created a nice community.
You're giving your audience a voice.
Yeah.
Which there aren't a lot of creators are afraid of that.
Which I don't understand. Like, they're the only reason my channel is doing as well as it is.
And honestly, you couldn't have spoken more of the truth than right there. Again, I've dropped her link in the chat, everybody. I can't recommend your channel enough. Do you have any final words before we put a cap on this?
I try to stream with the other people in our Discord group on Sundays, usually around 2:30. So if you want to come and chat, that's a great place to do it because you can talk to all of us. Well, all of us that are available.
And so I'll say this, right after the trailers dropped, I actually tuned into your guys' stream, and I had you guys in on the background while I was just like typing up my own theory. Like it was a vibe. It was just a vibe. But honestly, it's nothing but good vibes. I love the whole channel discussion stuff. Guys,
Same.
follow Pajama Let's Play. You're doing a disservice if you don't. Thank you again so much for coming on. And if you're hanging
Thank
out
you for
on
having
Twitch,
me.
oh, you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
If you're hanging out on Twitch, please join us for the raid. We'll be raiding Lands of Masters, another big friend of the channel. Again, Michelle, thank you for coming on. And everybody,
Thank you.
everybody was in the chat sharing their thoughts, their theories. Love you. Really couldn't thank you enough. Again,
Y'all make this possible.
y'all make this poppable. Y'all make this possible. Couldn't do it without you. Special shout out to Treehouse and Josh Z for the super chats, and we will see you all on the next one. Peace out, everybody.
Bye, guys.